Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this TLC session. My name is Mike Noble, and I will be the host for you. This TLC session is titled Supporting Student Success Through the Provision of Time Management Strategies by Dr. Jessi Harkins. We're excited that you have joined us today to hear Jessi's presentation. The chat window will be open during the session, so please feel free to participate or ask questions. Please welcome Jessi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we will use our time today as we're focusing on time management. The first thing I want to do is to find out who is here. If you'll take just a moment and let us know where you fit in these categories. I will always leave room for other attendees. I just want to know who's here today. Leave that on there for just a few more minutes. Okay, it looks like we have a nice spread of associate faculty, full-time faculty, some advisors, leadership team, and other attendees. So thank you for sharing that with me. I have an idea of how we all fit as far as student interaction for today's session. The first thing I want to focus on when we talk about time management strategies for our students is why this is even an issue that we need to take into consideration in our classroom or when working with students. The main research area that comes up when talking about student time management is based in the research of the family work conflict. So let's talk about what that is and why it's a concern, especially for individuals who reside in the US or have employment in the United States. The family work conflict is basically the balance between demands and responsibilities from the role of family, whether that family is a single or dual family home, whether that is the immediate family, the extended family, whether that's just the housemates of the individual in question, and balancing that role with a work responsibility. The demands and responsibilities from one role tend to overlap into the demands and responsibilities for the other, and finding that balance is often a challenge, and it results in stress and health issues and additional difficulties meeting the demands and responsibilities for both roles in the lives of the individual. I'm sure this is no news to anyone listening. We are all balancing our family and work, and in one way or the other. The reason this becomes an additional challenge for us working with students who either live or are employed in the United States is our system is actually set up with fewer resources to support working families than in other countries. So that support needs to come elsewhere. When we talk about the different challenges of balancing those roles, think about our students. Many students at Ashford are not only balancing their employment status with their family, but they're also balancing the additional challenge of being in school. Now, I don't know if you can relate to this as I can. I had the family schoolwork conflict when I was in graduate school, balancing family, balancing my position, and balancing what that meant to be a student as well. Our non-traditional students are balancing not only their family lives and their work responsibilities, but they're also balancing their school responsibilities with those life factors. So this family work conflict, or in our case, the family schoolwork conflict, does take a toll on health and ability to fulfill the roles that they need to do. So let's take a minute and just look at some common stressors. If you have a piece of paper handy, grab that. If you have your phone handy with a calculator, go ahead and grab that. This may or may not be a new piece of information for you. This is research from the 1960s from Holmes and Ray. It is actually the social readjustment rating scale. These are some common stressors that actually have an extreme impact on individuals' ability to fulfill their life roles, as well as potential for health and stress risks. So just take a look at these and add up your score as we go along. And as you're reading through these, keep in mind how many of these you may have heard from the students in some of your courses. So a death of a spouse or a partner is worth 100, divorce, separation, jail term, personal injury, marriage, loss of job, rekindling marriage. And as you see, some of these are actually positive events. It doesn't necessarily, stress doesn't necessarily indicate the perception of the event. It more indicates the effect that the event has on the individual. So changes in their health or the health of a family member, pregnancy, adding to the family, rearranging financial status, death of a close friend, change in different line of work, mortgage. I'll give you a few more minutes to start adding up. A son or a daughter leaving home, outstanding personal achievement, can actually be quite stressful. I can attest to this as I prepared for today's session. Revision of personal habits, change in work hours or conditions, moving, changing schools. Even a vacation can include stress. That's planning for it, engaging in it, coming home. We're coming upon the holiday seasons, or even a minor violation of the law. You see the lights flashing behind you after you're speeding a little bit too much. So after you've had a chance to kind of get an idea of what your score might be, go ahead and add up your score. If you have less than 150 points from those risk factors, you're actually at low risk, which means you have a relatively low amount of life change and you're less susceptible to stress-induced health breakdown. And we know stress-induced health breakdown can have an effect on not only the roles on one side of things with family and home, but also on school and work abilities as well. If your score is between 150 and 300 points, you're at a moderate risk. That means you have a 50% chance of a major health breakdown in the next 2 years. 300 points or more, you're at a high risk. It predicts an 80% chance of a major health breakdown. And this can actually be quite challenging. When I did my score, I know I was shocked at the risk factors involved. So this is anonymous, keep in mind, but if you'll take a minute and share with us by poll what your risk might be. And as we're sharing this again, keep your students in mind. See, we're getting a bit of a range. Give you just a few more minutes if you'd like to share. Okay, just about everyone has had a chance to indicate. You can see here, we're spread fairly evenly across, where 60% are at low risk, 33% are at that moderate risk, and we do have 7% at a higher risk of a health-induced and stress-induced situation. Thank you for sharing. So think about your students. How many of those reasons have you heard for a late assignment, a late discussion post, an extension, an incomplete, or the students that have just disappeared, or if they've mentioned it in their introductions as they're trying to get to know you in the course, maybe mentioned they're getting married, or they have just moved, or something has come up. And as we go into the holiday season, keep in mind that was also a stress factor. So these are things that we want to keep in mind for our students. At Ashford University, our students are self-regulated learners in many ways as they access their education virtually. They don't have someone there face-to-face to monitor and support and view those nonverbal cues of stress factors in their learning. We can't tell if they're paying attention in a lecture setting as in the same manner that we can when we're face-to-face. So when we think about these stress factors, who is there to support our students in their self-regulated learning environment? Well, the first answer, of course, should be you. As instructors and student-facing staff and faculty, we have that opportunity to be a support for our students. We may or may not know the exact stress factors that are going on in their lives, but we can postulate by the fact that they are learners who are balancing at least school and family, if not family, school, and work conflict in their lives, that there will be stress factors involved. We can also encourage students to seek out strategies of support from their fellow students. So let's talk about what we can do and why this is important in our classrooms. Time management skills are one of the best ways that we can support stress reduction and help students balance their school, family, work conflict. We can balance these skills by providing specific strategies to the students. Promoting our students to self-assess and find out where they are is one step that could be taken early on in a course to help students understand themselves. Fellow procrastinators unite. If some of our students may not be aware of their abilities and may not realize until later on in a course that they're not managing their time appropriately. And at that point, it's not too late, but it definitely could be prevented. There is a quiz that is available, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and save yourself some time, that helps students self-analyze their current ability to time manage. And I'm going to pull that up for you really quick just so that you can see what it is. I will be providing this link to you later on in the presentation. So this is just a simple way for students to kind of self-assess where they're at and their ability to plan and manage their time. This is something that could be shared in a course early on in the discussion and the introduction, or sent out to specific students as necessary to help the students determine where they stand. And this can help them in their next steps as they move forward in their time management through the course. In addition to promoting student time management, we need to explicitly and proactively provide resources for our students. You'll have a variety of types of students in every course, I'm sure. I know I do. Some students that you can tell they have already mastered the art of managing their time. They may be balancing 5 different roles, but they still have it mastered. And you may have students in your course that are somewhere in the middle. They typically respond on time, if not a little bit early. They may or may not have ever had a late assignment. They may indicate here and there some stresses, but they're still actively participating in the course. And then you may have your students who are late some of the time, or those students that it is a common pattern over time. Every assignment is late. There's always a question of what can be done in the 4th or 5th week of the course instead of the 1st week. Even when you support them one-on-one, there may not be that change in pattern of behavior. So how we can address this is explicitly and proactively providing those resources. Some of the resources that are already available to students and to you as instructors as well emphasize 4 main concepts in how students can manage their time and stress. The first, I'm sure you're not surprised, is to set goals and write them down. I know we practice this as professionals as well. It is a true time management skill that we can pass on and emphasize for our students. The second is taking care of themselves. That old saying is, the ship will go down without the captain. Students do need to understand, even though they may be fulfilling roles with dedication to others in their lives. Taking care of themselves is extremely important in order to keep balance and be successful in all roles in their lives. Organizing their environment and their time is the obvious area to focus on when working on time management, but there are a few suggestions on how that can be done as well. And then assessing and reflecting the effectiveness of time management and approach to balance. We already mentioned that quiz for an initial self-assessment. Just like anything else, continuing to monitor how students are utilizing their time management skills is important to determine if their strategies are actually working for them or if something else needs to be suggested or recommended. So let's take a minute to look at some specific suggestions that are underneath these 4 categories that we can be sharing with our students. As far as setting goals and writing them down, it's important to emphasize not only long-term goals, but short-term goals. And this applies to all areas of the student's school, work, family balance. So looking at goals for their home, looking at goals for their relationships, their career, their school life, their work, specific tasks, making sure that these goals are broken down so that they have an idea of what needs to be accomplished and what they would like to accomplish in all of those areas. It's also important to find an accountability partner. And this is something that we can emphasize to our students. I know for myself, when I was in graduate school, finding someone who was there to support and understood what was going on for me was very important. Sometimes that was a fellow student, sometimes that was a family member, but I always had someone there who understood what I was going through, and would keep me accountable to make sure that I wasn't slacking on one area or the other more than was necessary. This can be done virtually in a few ways. We can encourage our students to reach out personally to someone in their own environment, of course, but we can also utilize the Ashford Cafe and connections between students to encourage them to support one another as well and find those accountability partners for time management and for stress management as they're going through the same things. They have empathy for one another. In the area of taking care of oneself, this is, no news to anyone, but it's important for students to pay attention to their nutrition and diet to help reduce the effect that stress will have on their body. Sleep is important. Tell this to any grad student and they'll laugh at you. I don't know that I got more than 2 hours of sleep when I was in grad school, and maybe I can average 4 or 5 now. However, sleep is very important for our health. It can help to reset and be more productive in our daily activities than if we are sleep deprived. Getting a chance to exercise. In the days of standing desks, this is marvelous. Students can combine exercise with class time if they are able to stand and work, but incorporating time for leisure, relaxation, attending to one's emotional health, and building those family relationships and friendships is extremely important during a time that someone is balancing family, work, and school. You need the balance in life, and the time and opportunity to promote this for our students is important, just to give them that understanding that we know that this area of their life needs balance as well, and to support them in finding a way to balance their time out so that everything is successful. So how do they do that? One of the best ways is organizing their environment and their time. Some tips and tricks in this area include eliminating distractions in their dedicated learning space, making sure they have all the materials that they need before they begin a task, and setting a written routine and schedule. Emphasizing that written portion is extremely important. That aspect allows for a visual and something, again, back to that accountability piece, and you can encourage students to assess what is working when they have a documented schedule of what they were using. There's a little bit more room for analysis of their accountability system at that point. I am the queen of to-do lists. Making that written list of tasks that support goals is extremely important. Setting priorities, setting deadlines, and making use of quote-unquote downtime. So if a student finds themselves with an extra 15 minutes while they're waiting for their child to be released from practice, that downtime can be utilized. Maybe even having an additional list that emphasizes where that downtime can be utilized. So a separate section or category for downtime tasks that might be able to fit into a 5 or 10 minute period. Learning to say no. This is still on my to-do list. However, learning to say no is also important for students, and letting them know that it's okay to say no to additional roles and obligations while they're already balancing schoolwork and family. Learning to say no even if they might want to attend a specific function while balancing, looking at those priorities and their goals and determining whether what they're agreeing to will meet those goals or inhibit them from actually accomplishing them. And then encouraging that flexibility. Once you have the organization and the structure in place, encouraging them to make use of flexibility so that they can truly live during this time period of balancing all 3 roles in their lives. Creating a written timetable. So listing out the times that they will devote to the different areas of priority: family time, work time, schoolwork time, and a time to focus on health and leisure and sleep. Actually blocking this out and writing it down. Now, they may not specifically be able to adhere to it. However, having it written gives that guideline and a chance to start again the next day if they weren't able to succeed on that particular day. Allowing time to take breaks between tasks is extremely important. I know even in my children's classroom in the elementary school, they're encouraging brain breaks. We need those too as adults. Switching tasks in between or work is extremely important. Switching mindsets, giving yourself about 15, 20 to 30 minutes to focus on one activity, set that timer, and then change activities and focus at that point in time to give yourself a fresh look at what you're doing, and you can accomplish a lot more one after another. And our 4th area, that assessment. So truly monitoring whether if what they're using is working and then making adjustments as needed is another way to encourage our students to use their time and stress management tools efficiently and effectively. So I have a gift for you. I'm going to save you some time. I've created an online student time management resource backpack that you're able to share with students. This is also something that could be modified as you find additional resources. This might be something that you can use in announcements. This might be something that you could use in providing specific contact with students that might be struggling. I'm going to paste the link right now in the chat. So hopefully that showed up for everyone. This, as I said, this time management resource backpack is just a start. Let me give you a chance to look at what it looks like really quickly. I think we have a little bit of time left. So when you click on that link, you'll see those tips and tricks I just walked you through for our students. However, you'll also find the quiz that we discussed for self-assessment at the beginning, as well as a series of links of some peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed resources out there from organizations, universities, other experts in the field, for how they suggest time management skills for both graduate students, undergraduate students, and online students, as well as students in general. So these are links that the students are able to access and do additional research on their own if the initial suggestions are not exactly what they need. There is more out there beyond just this list, but it's a good start. And as I said, that explicit sharing in the beginning is something that I really encourage you to do. Download this, provide any additional resources that you have to your students, and share with your colleagues as well. These can be shared, as I said, to specific students or on a general basis. I encourage you to do it in the beginning of a course. This sets your students up for success. And then encourage support networks between the students in the Ashford Cafe. As I mentioned earlier, we do have the CHAMPS program here at Ashford to refer your students to support and receive support from other students here. Whether they are proficient already at their time management, they might be able to share that with their fellow students and support them, and vice versa. If they are really struggling and even just self-managing their time is not going to be effective, this might be an answer. And also utilize your resources that we already have here at Ashford for supporting students and considering access and wellness as it's necessary. So it's your turn. If you have specific strategies that you already use to support time management in your classrooms, I would love to hear them. Any questions you might have at this point, that would be fabulous. David, I like that idea, just putting it in course shells. This is something that I am looking at considering if we can look at this information and see if it's effective in supporting our students for success and retention. I would love to consider if this is something to share with everyone. Tutoring support, Mindy, I agree. Incorporating this into tutoring in the CHAMPS program, if this list it's already ready-made, so if it's something that could be helpful, I'll definitely consider sharing that on so that more students and faculty can make use of this information.
Hi, Jessi.
Hi, Mike.
I had taken some notes through the chat as it went on, and I wanted to bring up some of the things that had been brought up. There were a couple things that students brought up, and I'll just put them out there and I'll let you answer them how you like. The first was on military stresses and how that wasn't brought up. I noticed that your list showed some really high scores for family-based issues, and I'm wondering, you showed that there are supportive measures that you give, and how do you think those would be applicable to military students? And the second one, sorry to throw them together, but then I want to let everyone else ask their questions. Someone asked about family emergency or illness, often given as students turn in late work. And I just wanted to tie that to something because the Dean panel that presented yesterday focused on the point that giving additional time is not decreasing academic rigor when a student has a setback, but it's allowing them to complete work, so it actually brings up academic rigor. It gives them the ability to complete that work. And I was just wondering if you would talk to those two issues.
Of course, thanks, Mike. In most of the research that was reviewed for this particular presentation, military challenges, they definitely incorporate additional stressors, and I would be surprised if military students did not have additional factors on that historical scale from the 1960s, because many of those factors are incorporated just in the day-to-day job factors. But military students, the family work school balance, that work component in the research, the military career would be incorporated into that side of the balance. However, considering the additional stressors for military students has definitely sparked for me a need to add to the checklist and perhaps have an additional section or an addendum for students who are specifically looking for abilities for time management when your career is dictated a bit differently as it is for military students. So I appreciate whoever brought that up in the chat. That's an excellent point and a very, very relevant to our students and our student population, and an important factor to consider. And Mike, as you mentioned, as far as the allowance for additional time, I think the university has focused a lot on our abilities to consider student needs and empathy while still balancing rigor, as was mentioned in the Dean panel. And research that has been reviewed does suggest that students who are still succeeding in the classroom, given that grace or that period of time that might be necessary when they are in a situation where they are not functionally able to complete an assignment based on that stress-based health risk or the situational factors that are involved allows them a chance to provide a quality learning experience when they are able to come back and do that. So I think that encouraging time management and recognizing it at the beginning with our students gives them that opportunity for an open dialogue with instructors to share those as they come up, and feel comfortable working together as they are focused on success and actually completing the courses.